time to go over some of the finer details.
All right. Back. Season 4. Can you believe we've been doing this for 4 years?
We've done
already?
3 seasons.
This is number 4, man.
Thank God the internet can't take us down. I mean,
Well, it helps that nobody's watching, so.
yeah, I was going to say,
Hopefully we get them all recorded before somebody figures it out.
Peggy Sue Got Married was released on October 10th, 1986. Had a budget of $18 million and made $41.5 million. So, made a profit. I feel like a lot of these Coppola movies before 1990-ish were kind of this same sort of model where they weren't like huge, but they were bigger budget, but not, Godfather-esque or Apocalypse Now-esque. But he seems to run into the same issues on every single film that he does, where he goes over budget, ends up completely going back into the edit like 6 months later and reshooting stuff, which is no different in this film, which we'll get to. But, of course, directed by the legendary Francis Ford Coppola, who is Nicolas Cage's uncle, as we well know by now on this show, unless you're only watching this episode. Widely considered to be one of the greatest directors of all time, if not the greatest director of all time. 5 Academy Awards, 6 Golden Globes, 2 Palme d'Ors, and a BAFTA. Palme d'Or, of course, is like best in film in Cannes, so the best film shown at Cannes wins the Palme d'Or, which is a huge honor.
Was Peggy Sue Got Married?
2, yeah. Not Peggy Sue Got Married.
I know.
what?
That'd be a bizarre world.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was probably one of the Godfathers and probably Apocalypse Now.
Godfather Part 3.
Yeah, Godfather 3, which we will get to. Sofia Coppola, of course, is in this film, and we will talk about her at length. Francis Ford Coppola, of course, is the son of legendary composer Carmine Coppola. A lot of nepotism in this family. But it all started with Carmine Coppola, who actually ended up becoming famous largely because of his son, because he was kind of like a musician before, but wasn't like super well known until he did the music for The Godfather, and that's when his career took off. So I guess it was reverse nepotism.
It's uncletism.
Uncletism.
Uncletism. I don't know what. The nepotism means like nephew-tism, whatever. Nipote means nephew in Italian.
Well, I mean, Nick Cage is definitely.
Yeah.
And of course, like the rest of the family, he of course is Carmine is the father of August, which is Nick's dad, and then Talia Shire, of course, and is Nick's grandfather, Sofia Coppola's grandfather, who's also in this film, Roman Coppola, Jason Schwartzman, Robert Schwartzman, and the late Giancarlo Coppola, who I had never really heard of, but that was Francis's son, who actually died not too much before this film came out, which is pretty sad. He died in a speedboat accident. I don't know if it was while they were shooting, but I think he died like shortly before the film came out. But in Coppola timelines, that's like a year and a half before. So, he actually went back. We'll talk about it in the quick facts, but he went back into the edit 6 months after they were finished with the film because he didn't think there were enough tears, aren't enough sad moments, the tear jerkers. Which I would argue there are still none. But
What did he add?
I want to know what he added.
I think that it's that whole ending with Crazy Charlie in the hospital, all of that stuff, because you can tell like Nick Cage's hair is completely different.
Way different.
I didn't even notice that, but
oh god, yeah.
Maybe she was supposed to be in a coma for like 6 months.
Maybe.
Yeah, that explains it. Yeah, he just let himself go during that time.
Yeah, coked out a little bit.
Francis Ford Coppola also co-wrote Patton, which I did not know, the George C. Scott film, which won him his first Oscar. The Godfather films, 1 through 3. We can't throw out 3. Though, I've rewatched all three of them several times, and I will say 3 is not a terrible movie. It is a terrible movie compared to 1 and 2, but it is not a bad movie. It's actually a pretty decent movie, and I feel like it did wrap things up fairly well with Michael Corleone. But in comparison, holy shit. You got these 2 masterpieces and then you got that thing.
I don't think I've seen the third one. I've seen the first 2, but I don't think I got around to seeing the third one.
The biggest criticism of the third one is Sofia Coppola. I would say that's
so you're saying is like the Godfather 3 is like the Spider-Man 3 of the Godfather trilogy.
Yes.
Where like on its own it's not horrible, but when you compare it to the first 2, definitely a step down.
Pretty spot on comparison.
Yeah. Spider-Man 3 is our modern day
equivalent.
Godfather 3.
It's just millennial Godfather 3.
He also did my favorite film of all time. This is like a 2-way tie between Apocalypse Now and The Shining, but Apocalypse Now is like forever etched in my brain as like one of my favorite films of all time. It's a masterpiece, but of course it was like wrought with peril through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Production was completely wiped out at one point because of a hurricane and like it was just way over budget and nobody even knew what was going on. And then, he ended up delivering this incredible film, but the studio was not happy. Same thing happened here on this film, but we'll get to that. Also worked with Nick on Rumblefish and The Cotton Club. So we will be talking about Francis Ford Coppola more, but this is the only like starring role for Nick in a Coppola film. Those other ones, he's more of like a side character. We'll also get into it in the quick facts, but he probably would have ended up working with his uncle a lot more had he not made some of the choices that he made during this film, which to me actually make the film much more enjoyable. His choices.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be annoyed more by that voice, but it was the least problematic thing in this film.
Yeah. It was written by Jerry Lightning. Jerry McQueen and Arlene Sarner, who are a married writing team, who also wrote Blue Sky from 1994 and Switched at Birth in 1999. That's pretty much all they've written as far as like big projects. Not a whole lot of credits that I recognized, or credits in general. There's just not much there. I always wonder about that. Like, how do they make a living? What did they do?
I bet you they probably did a lot of screen doctoring or script doctoring.
Yeah, probably.
I bet, and they just don't get credited for it. There's a lot of that stuff. I bet you they probably wrote a bunch or like fixed a bunch of TV shit.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Carrie Fisher was a kind of renowned script doctor.
Yeah. I was gonna say she worked on some pretty famous stuff that people don't know about.
All sorts of things. She went back and really helped like on Hook and like she worked with Spielberg a bunch and with George Lucas, of course. But great writer.
She couldn't save episode 3 though. Sorry,
episode 9.
No, episode 3.
She couldn't save 9 because she was dead.
Jesus.
She couldn't save any of that trilogy. Shot by Jordan Cronenweth. It's just constant weird names on this show.
Yeah.
Cronenweth. He is known for a very distinctive noir style to his films, which is best seen in Blade Runner, which won him a BAFTA.
Okay, I thought that name sounded super familiar because I just rewatched those movies not that long ago. I was like, man, that name sounds familiar. Yeah,
I remember seeing
super
it.
Familiar name, Cronenweth.
Yeah, it's an odd name. It's hard
a very
to forget.
Weird name. Yeah.
Interesting.
But you notice it pretty heavily on the Blade Runner credits, like as they're coming up, because Because I feel like those are some of the most iconic credits of like flying over the city and stuff. He won a BAFTA, of course, for Blade Runner. Was also nominated for an Oscar for Blade Runner, but somehow didn't win. I don't know who won, but like Blade Runner is one of the most amazing shot films besides Blade Runner 2049. It, like somehow, and Deakins didn't win for 2049 either. I don't believe, if I remember right, or maybe he did. So. Maybe that was the one because he was like the darling of the Oscars who never won anything. Like he'd been nominated a shit ton. Maybe that was the first one. I don't remember.
I think when Blade Runner came out, it was like you didn't see a lot of sci-fi getting Oscars. So no matter how groundbreaking of a film it was,
it's kind of sad. The Academy has come around to certain things, but not other things. Like anything that makes money, they're not into that.
Yeah, they're still super pretentious.
Yeah,
super pretentious.
Jordan Cronenweth also worked with the great Robert Altman, Jonathan Demme, and of course his old pals with Norman Jewison, and of course Ridley Scott. Many of the directors who we've come across on this show. And of course, Francis Ford Coppola. He unfortunately battled Parkinson's from 1984 until he passed in 1996, which is kind of crazy for a cinematographer to have Parkinson's and still be an Oscar nominated. I mean, you're basically just weighing in on lights and visuals and where things go, and then other people handle the camera. But
then inventing shaky cam.
Yeah. Although I wonder did he shoot the Bourne movies?
No, that was Michael J. Fox. He shot those. He also shot a film called Touch of Satan, which is one of the greatest Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes.
He shot that? That's hilarious.
He shot The Touch of Satan.
Always a good thing you can say about a movie.
Yes.
It's been a great Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode.
I feel like, okay, so the secret to a great Mystery Science Theater episode is the film has to be just good enough. It can't be like really shitty because in the movie, the episode is just not as good. The movie has to be just like a certain level of good. And so you need like an Oscar-worthy cinematographer and, a few pieces to fall your way that make the movie not so shitty that it's just horrible to watch, but actually enjoyable, This was edited by Barry Malkin, who is a frequent collaborator with Coppola, editing 6 of his films, including The Godfather Part 2, which he got an Oscar nomination, but not a win, and a BAFTA win. Also edited Rumblefish and was nominated for The Cotton Club. So we will be talking about him again. And also edited this film that's kind of forgotten weirdly from the early 90s called The Freshman. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. It's kind of like a play on The Godfather where basically Marlon Brando plays the exact same character that he played in The Godfather. Matthew Broderick is like a freshman, and then he gets involved with this mob thing, but it ends up being
I have seen that movie.
Selling
that rings a
exotic
bell.
Meats. Yeah.
Because when you said The Freshman, Matthew Broderick's face popped in my mind, but I don't know if I was just associating Ferris Bueller. If I was just thinking of that
kind
movie.
of a great forgotten film. I actually really enjoyed that movie. It was one of those movies that was on all the time when I was a kid.
It's like a tongue-in-cheek comedy, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of like a parody of the guy. Okay, maybe I have seen that movie.
And they're terrified for their lives the whole time.
Yeah.
It's the guy from the other guy who's in City Slickers. The guy who ended up killing himself in real life. Oh
God, all I can remember is Billy Crystal from those movies. I can't think of anybody else in those films.
And Jack Palance.
Oh yeah, he was in those too. Huh? Fuck. Yeah.
And the guy from Home Alone.
Yeah, I was going to say that guy. They played Marv. What the hell is his name?
Marv.
David Stearns.
The narrator from The Wonder Years. Too, by the way. And then music by John Barry, who is a English composer who has scored I think he's passed, but English composer who scored 11 Bond films.
Wow.
Won 5 Oscars for films such as Out of Africa, Meryl.
God damn.
It's the only thing I know about that movie.
I just can't wait to get out of Africa. Dances with Wolves, scored one of my favorite Eddie Murphy films of all time, The Golden Child, back before Eddie Murphy fell off the rails. I don't know what happened with that guy.
Kids.
Yeah, I think so.
Kids.
Same thing's happening to Nigel. I mean, look at that beard.
Yeah, he hasn't washed in a month.
Yeah, you just sort of lose control of everything in your life.
Yeah, I could see that. And easily the best George Lucas film of all time, Howard the Duck. Remember that music from Howard the Duck?
You know what's funny is I didn't think this movie had, like, the music was way too good for the film.
I thought you were going to say it felt like Howard the Duck. Through certain
I mean,
parts, especially Nick Cage's character.
Yeah. Also,
Guess it would make, if you think he's trying to sound like a duck, I guess.
Yeah.
You could explain his
Hi.
choice.
Trick.
It's got kind of a Pee Wee Herman thing going on.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I'm like, why is he doing a Pee Wee Herman voice?
Why is he doing that?
Imagine that's what Francis Ford Coppola was saying every goddamn day on set.
Yep. Ratings. Surprisingly, very high rating. 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. 6.8
Wow.
out of 10 on 30 reviews. Not a ton of sample size there, but, you know. No.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't give it an 87%. It's an okay movie, but 87%? Holy shit. The audience score, though, 55%. Which is like, so the critics were very high on it, but the audience was not. Usually the opposite.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe just this was a Francis Ford Coppola stroke job.
Yeah, at the time,
Yeah.
you didn't want to be like
yeah.
the critic who wrote a bad review for a Francis Ford Coppola movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially with only 30 review, like there weren't a lot of people writing reviews about it, so it's not like it was probably wasn't a big talked about movie. So if you're going to come out as the guy who shit talked Francis Ford Coppola,
Yeah.
could be your career.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, should stay true. Stay true to your craft like we do over here. That's why we're so popular. Metacritic, 75%, which is also very high for Metacritic. IMDb, back to the audience, 6.4 out of 10, which, you know, like I said, 55%, 6.4. The audience, that seems to be more, that's where I'm probably going to end up. And then the cinema score was a B+, which also tracks.
Yeah.
As we've talked about many times, like anything under like an A- is pretty tepid, not so great. Which I felt that, you know, like as you're getting done with the movie, you're kind of like, what the hell was the point of all of that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I'm guessing that's what the audience was feeling as they were walking out of the theater, and they were like,
That mixed with this guy did The Godfather. That's what I said to myself several times while watching it.
yeah.
Yeah. How do you go from Apocalypse Now to this?
Right.
Apocalypse Now too. You mean my Huang?
Well, as we know, that probably wasn't him.
Oh yeah, that's
Doing that.
definitely a Nick Cage, man.